Welcome into the Beat Sessions, the place for all things music and where we do the listening for you. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Hope you're all having a great start to your weekend. I want to lead things off for the week of June 23rd with Portugal the Man and this new record, Chris Black Changed My Life. This is studio album number 9 for the band and their follow-up to 2017's Woodstock, an album that saw John and Zach and the rest of this crew go from indie darlings to worldwide household names. Contained the hit single Feel It Still, absolutely massive. Has over 1 billion hits to date. You know, you don't really make a whole lot of money streaming music, but if you have a song that gets 1 billion hits, you're probably going to make a little bit of money on that. Like, I hope at like the end of the day, my channel in its lifetime gets 1 billion hits. So I can't imagine just one song. Just on the charts in a number of countries for weeks, number of accolades to its name, a worldwide tour that followed along with that record. Talk about a guy like John Gorley, who notoriously shy. I mean, this is a guy that played with his back to the crowd for a number of years until I think it was Bruno Mars at a show who approached him afterwards and was like, "Hey man, that was great, but I was just staring at your ass the whole time." So he's come out of his shell a little bit in the years, but still very modest. I love how level-headed and cool he is. Seems like a really fun guy. And listening to him talk about the success of that song, of that record, in, you know, the light of this new album, in the aftermath, it's really interesting. It's a situation where I think a lot of artists that have had to deal with that have put way too much pressure on themselves, and they've maybe been in a position where the forces, the powers that be around them put too much pressure there. So I like that, he reached a point eventually where that weight was off his shoulders, off the shoulders of the rest of the band, and they were just able to make a good, fun, thoughtful, inspiring record, which is just what they do. I really love the music that they make, grounded in pop, but there's so much soul and funk influence, little go-go, and then a great influence of just rock and roll, classic rock, alternative rock, indie rock, hip hop, electronic, so much going on. And this is an outfit that is not afraid to navigate some darker territory. And especially with this new record, the loss of friend Chris Black in 2019, he's a guy that they describe as, the dude that was the glue. He just kept the crew together. And it's an unfortunate thing. And especially, I feel like it's oftentimes subconscious. I've had this conversation with people I know, people that were part of friend groups that no longer gather because sadly that individual is gone. And they talk about not realizing how dynamic this one person was, their personality and the way that it brought all these other different individuals together. It's often sad when that person is gone and you see that type of thing happen. You see a good friend group fall apart. So thankfully these guys managed to keep things together, but it was a trying moment for all of them. The separation of COVID. This is an outfit that, coming off that world tour, especially, spent lots of time together. So being apart was difficult. And then John, wife Zoe, who's also in the band, they discover that their daughter in 2021 has a super rare neurodegenerative disease. I think she's like one of like 6 people or something like this that has to deal with this disease. It's really unfortunate. So just a very tough couple of years since that massive success, which in and of itself is problematic and very difficult to deal with. So check out some interviews with John. Very humble, very cool to listen to in the aftermath of all this. This record certainly feels catharsis is something that has come up in conversation recently, but certainly feels like the opportunity for this outfit to work through all the stuff that, that has hit their shoulders in the last 5 years or so. So I love this record. I will say that 11 songs, 34 minutes, these compositions, very pop driven as far as, that 3 to 3.5 minute time frame, navigate a lot of fun territory. So I do admire that about the music and really just superb melodies. I would say the one thing that bums me out a little bit, talking about John, who's not afraid to talk about difficult issues, especially, if it's personal stuff or social issues, which he's a big activist. And I love that about him. I feel like I've been misunderstood as far as how I appreciate an artist and what they bring into the world as far as their influence. But I think, there's a difference between a guy like John, who's an environmentalist, who has done a number of things with organizations over the years, organizations for music, getting instruments into the hands of inner city kids, any child that might not otherwise have the opportunity to get into music. There's all these things, versus playing like some politicians rally. I think there's a big difference. And so I love that he's a big believer in supporting what is important to him, being out there in the world, whether it's his music or just him, his presence. It's great. It feels a little banal on this record. I'll argue that though. I like the issues that he's addressing. I think there's important stuff that is brought up on this record, but the verbiage just feels like it falls flat. It feels somewhat uninspired. And for a guy like John, who's, he's a pretty talented cat. It feels like, as far as the verbiage and the insight that goes along with that perspective, the wordplay, it could be better. I will say that. And I feel like the opening track, Heavy Games 2, is a good example of, you get this soulful piano to open, the vocal enters, the harmonies are great, but the lyrics just aren't. And, Jeff Basker making an appearance on that track and another song, working on production on this thing. I really like him working with the group on this album. It feels like it has more continuity versus Woodstock. It's an interesting affair. It's like Danger Mouse, Mike D from the Beastie Boys, a number of other producers showed up on that thing. And so it does feel like this record has, more direction, more of a focus. I will say that to its credit. Grim Generation is your second track. Feel like this song should have just opened things up to start with. They should have just left Heavy Games 2 alone, opened it up with this thick rolling bass. I love the way that it comes in. Get this cool break beat in the percussion. Bright vocal, bit of guitar that works in. It's a very chill song. And I like the way that the chorus finds a bit more energy. It's a nice little contrast there. Thunderdome WTA featuring Black Thought. And I believe it's Natalia Lafourcade is how you say that, is your third track. But guitar leads in, followed by some psychedelic organ, and then it settles into this solid mid-tempo groove. It's a really interesting vibe. I love the vibe of this track, but then it shifts. And when Black Thought comes in, definitely one of the highlights of this album. You get these frenzied swirling guitars as he goes to work with the vocals. It's a really fun moment in the song. And then, he backs out and it kind of gets back to that more mellow pace. But in a lot of ways, it feels like the mellow parts of the track really just set it up for him to be the highlight. And I really dug that part of the song. Dummy is your fourth track, hitting with that light psychedelic funk, a little bit of hip hop on this thing too. It takes a big swing in the chorus. This thing is all over the place. It's like there's like a little bit of like nursery rhyme, polka. It's very catchy. A lot of fun instrumentation at work there. It's a very interesting track, and I'm a big fan. Probably one of my favorites. Summer of Love featuring Unknown Mortal Orchestra is your fifth song. Bit of a conventional alternative rock feel on this thing. It's probably like the least adventurous of the tracks. Get this loose guitar riff, and I really do appreciate the hook and the chorus on this song. You get this great saxophone element at work that's nicely done. Big fan of that. Ghost Town is your sixth song. Lo-fi guitar ushers in this light, breezy arrangement. A bit of bossa nova that I'm feeling on this thing. Go-go, some psychedelic elements. There's like the spaghetti western vibe that works its way in. This is my favorite song, I think. It's really playful. There's a lot of cool instrumentation. All those nuances that come together are exceptional to listen to. Time's a Fantasy. Jeff on this track as well. Got this eerie piano and sci-fi synth. The female harmony from Zoe is absolutely exquisite on this thing. I'm loving that. Nice movement in the piano on this track. Another great song. Doubt is your eighth song. Big piano and vocal. Rolling drums to open on this thing. I love the bass that works in. Really bright melodies at play on this thing. The vocal melodies, bright, contrasting with the rest of the instrumentation's a great element to the song. And you get this chorus that tends to really capture and embody more of that brighter element. Plastic Island is your ninth song. Light, pop-driven alternative rock. This is kind of a hit or miss for me, because I think after more listens, all those little nuances will probably hit more and I'll appreciate it. But on first listen, this was a track that it didn't make an impression on me the way that pretty much all the other ones did. Champ is your 10th song featuring Edgar Winter. You got this simple drum element, organ, and some thick bass that works in. It's a real soulful track. The vocal melody is dope on this thing. It's got a great gospel element that works in that I really enjoyed a lot. But then it takes this like intense turn into this metal component, and there's this vocal element that it feels intense and it feels out of place. The message is spot on. We've all heard the message. But honestly, it reminded me of Justin Bieber and the record Justified, which is about Haley. It's about his wife, but I mean, he thinks it's a political record because he drops in a couple of Martin Luther King Jr. quotes, excuse me. It feels misplaced. It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel like it belongs necessarily in the record. And it's one of these moments where, like I appreciate activism, but there's moments and there's times where like you can mess that up. And I think this is one where it's not hitting right for me. Anxiety, Clarity featuring Paul Williams is your final track. Light synths and guitar, simple breakbeat to open this thing up. It's a really fun track. It's got this psychedelic journey with all this bright instrumentation. Biggest song on the album to close it out. Really enjoyed the closer on this thing. This record, for its misses, man, the music is so much fun to listen to. This thing from start to finish. It's a pretty hot listen at 34 minutes. So that's something else that I like about it too. Great summer record. It's honestly the type of thing that, if you wanted to just, let it play and enjoy it, you could. If you want to take the time to dig into it and decide what you think about the lyrical content and some of that more nitty gritty stuff there, well, then I think it's worth taking the time to check out too. But either way, we're going to give this thing a vinyl, please. I enjoyed it enough, and I think you will as well. So I hope you find this review helpful. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help us blow this project up in 2023, and stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We'll see you next time on the Beat Sessions.